Translation and purport. Translation. The spiritual world, which consists of three-fourths of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world, and it is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Others, who are attached to family life and who do not strictly follow celibacy vows, must live within the three material worlds. Responsibly. The spiritual world, which consists of three-fourths of Lord's energy,
is
situated beyond this material world, and it is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Others who are attached to family life, and who do not strictly follow celibacy vows, must live within the three material worlds.
So, Krishna Kirtan Prabhu, now only you can be heard. And a reminder for anybody who just came in is that later on at the end of Krishna Kirtan Prabhu's talk, he's going to share his screen. He has a PowerPoint. So I'll mute myself now. Thank you, Prabhu.
Purport. The climax of the system of Varnashrama Dharma or Sanatana Dharma is clearly expressed here in this particular verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. The highest benefit that can be awarded to a human being is to train him to be detached from sex life, particularly because it is only due to sex indulgence that the conditioned life of material existence continues birth after birth. Human civilization in which there is no control of sex life is a fourth-class civilization, because in such an atmosphere there is no liberation of the soul encaged in the material body. Birth, death, old age, and disease are related to the material body, and they have nothing to do with the spirit soul. But as long as the bodily attachment for sensual enjoyment is encouraged, the individual spirit soul is forced to continue the repetition of birth and death on account of the material body, which is compared to garments subjected to the law of deterioration. In order to award the highest benefit of human life, the Varnashram system trains the follower to adopt the vow of celibacy, beginning from the order of brahmachari. The brahmachari life is for students who are educated to follow strictly the vow of celibacy. Youngsters who have had no taste of sex life can easily follow the vow of celibacy, and once fixed in the principle of such a life, one can very easily continue to the highest perfectional stage, attaining the kingdom of the three-fourths energy of the Lord. It is already explained that in the cosmos of the three-fourths energy of the Lord, there is neither death nor fear, and one is full of the blissful life of happiness and knowledge. A householder attached to family life can easily give up such a life of sex indulgence if he has been trained in the principles of the life of a brahmachari. A householder is recommended to quit home at the end of 50 years, pancho shordvam vanam vrajet, and live a life in the forest. Then, being fully detached from family affection, he may accept the order of renunciation as a sannyasi, fully engaged in the service of the Lord. Any form of religious principles in which the followers are trained to pursue the vow of celibacy is good for the human being, because only those who are trained in that way can end the miserable life of material existence. The principles of nirvana, as recommended by Lord Buddha, are also meant for ending the miserable life of material existence. And this process, in the highest degree, is recommended here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, with clear perception of ideal perfection, although basically there is no difference between the process of Buddhists, Shankarites, and Vaishnavites for promotion to the highest status of perfection, namely freedom from birth and death, anxiety and fearfulness. Not one of these processes allows the follower to break the vow of celibacy. The householders and persons who have deliberately broken the vow of celibacy cannot enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. The pious householders, or the fallen yogis, or the fallen transcendentalists, can be promoted to the higher planets within the material world, which is 1/4 of the energy of the Lord, but they will fail to enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. Avrihadvrata are those who have broken the vow of celibacy. The vanaprasthas, or those retired from family life, and the sannyasis, or the renounced persons, cannot break the vow of celibacy if they want to success in the process. The brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis do not intend to take rebirth apraja, nor are they meant for secretly indulging in the sex life. Such a fall down by the spiritualist may be compensated by another chance for human life in good families, of learned brahmanas, or of rich merchants for another term of elevation. But the best thing is to attain the highest perfection of deathlessness as soon as the human form of life is attained. Otherwise, the whole policy of human life will prove to be a total failure. Lord Chaitanya was very strict in advising his followers in this matter of celibacy. For a transcendentalist, one of his personal attendants, Chota Haridas, was severely punished by Lord Chaitanya because of his failure to observe the vow of celibacy. For a transcendentalist, therefore, who at all wants to be promoted to the kingdom of beyond material miseries, it is worse than suicide to deliberately indulge in sex life, especially in the renounced order of life. Sex life in the renounced order of life is the most perverted form of religious life, and such a misguided person can only be saved if, by chance, he meets a pure devotee. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyanandana Shalakaya Chakshurudmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manavishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashnaya Parishmita Kyunanta Santinamina Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharim Vishishvinavani Paschatya Nishitarya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. We are continuing second canto, 6th chapter. I think the previous one and this chapter describes universal form of the Lord, Virat Rupa. The previous section was specifically dealing with this Virat Rupa descriptions, how different things, actually all the things in this world, are related directly to the Lord, in which way, how they are actually His energy. Today's verse describes the process of renunciation, and the next verses further in this chapter will describe how we should use this vision that everything is connected to the Lord, namely by engaging it in His service, by offering a sacrifice. So it is all very important part of what Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls a retraction. The sadhana bhakti has those two parts: the attachment part, our cultivation of attachment to the holy name of the Lord, to devotees of the Lord, to deity of the Lord. And also the second part is of the retraction of liberation or cutting off the attachment for this world. And those two things go on simultaneously. And it is also important to loosen our attachments for this world in order to be attached to Krishna. There is an example that we cannot hold a diamond if somebody offers us a diamond to our hand, but if we are holding in our hand a chunk of coal, then we cannot grasp the diamond. So we have to let it go and accept the real thing. So yeah, this is very important. This Viratrupa, part of the process, it shows how everything in this world is actually connected to the Lord, because our attachment to it means that we are attached to it without seeing the Lord in it. So in order to spiritualize our consciousness, the Lord, we can see the Lord within our attachment. We can see the Lord within our limited, conditioned vision by the process that was described, especially. So sometimes it is described that this meditation on Viratrupa is a process for materialists. So it's true, but it's also applicable to us if we are attached to a specific form, to some kind of enjoyment. We should try to see the Lord within it. In this way, our focus will change and we'll start to be appreciating actually that we are connected to the Lord, that we are attached to the Lord, and then we'll loosen this fearful grasp to holding to this specific form of our attachment. So this vision described before is important for this renunciation, to renounce the material pleasure. It's important to see it in connection to the Lord, because actually everything is Lord energy, and therefore it will be further described. We are not stopping just here that everything is spiritual. Everything is spiritual, it's coming from the Lord, and therefore should be used for the service of the Lord. And in the next verse, or a couple of the next verses, it will be specified that actually the Lord's energy is here, everything is spiritual, but it's very important, the Lord is separate from it, from everything created, that He is on a transcendental position. So in this consciousness we should offer Him service, that actually He is beyond, it is all His energy, it all belongs to His, nothing is ours, even our body, even our intelligence, our power of speech, our power of remembrance, our everything is actually coming from Him. We cannot take anything for granted in this material world, but all those things should be used for His pleasure, who is sitting within our heart, and I think it's mentioned that He has 9 inches. So it's all coming from this transcendental person. Yes, so this part of retraction is also important, and those two things actually are cultivated separately. Of course, by spiritual attachment, by the taste, we can give up the lower taste, but the problem is that actually, being in this material world, we not only have the material attachments, but we are consciously and subconsciously cultivating our material attachments. So we really need some exercise of intelligence. We need some introspection. We need to give a deep thought on in which way we are still attached, and to what, and how can we give it up, and not just stop there, just to give it up and be liberated in this part or some smaller part, but how to engage it in the service of the Lord. Because all of this, coming to the liberated position, is only a gateway for engaging in the service of the Lord. It is like it's like a door, but behind the door there is a different room. So we are not going to stop at the door, at the threshold, but actually our goal is to go to this Tripad Vibhuti, the free form of material energy. Recently I was contemplating that this is also something that we can observe in our japa practice. In our japa practice, we are giving up material thoughts and we are not nourishing the material thoughts, simply listening. And this simply listening part, is really giving attention to the holy name. This is this positive aspect, and this neglecting the material thoughts and not nourishing our different desires, but just whenever they come, okay, we are not focusing on it and just trying to hear and chant nicely. This is this negative part. So this negative part is the thing that we have in common with Buddhists, with impersonalists. Up to the point of liberation, we can say our process is the same. We are getting liberated by giving up those attachments, by acting with detachment, purifying our heart, getting spiritual knowledge. So this part is common. So yeah, this is. So maybe I will use. I wanted to use a non-authorized example that in a similar way, like Buddhists are trying to achieve some absolute silence. So in this way, we should also give, with this determination, we should also give up the material pursuits in our japa and just try to hear and chant nicely. Yeah, so this is the general principle of this renunciation and retraction. And the peak of it is sex enjoyment, attachment to sex life. This is something that holds everybody, every one of us in this material world, attachment for sex life. So actually the situation is precarious, as Prabhupada says in the purport, that for a normal people it's almost hopeless. But there is only one way, or maybe two ways. The first is that if somebody understands the situation of happiness in the material world, there is a very nice example from some Vedic stories that there is a man who is walking around the forest, and suddenly he starts to be chased by the tiger, and then he's running, and while he's running, he falls into a very there is a ditch in front of him, very deep. He's running. He grabs some not trunk. He grabs on the way a branch of a tree. He falls into the ditch. The tree, not trunk, but this tree holds him in the middle of the ditch while he's falling down. So he's there, and the tiger is above him. He's hanging on this tree part, suffering very much. And on the bottom there is snake. There are lots of very poisonous snakes, venomous snakes that are trying to bite him. The tiger is from the up, snakes from down. But on this on the not trunk, but sorry, I have to look in the word. On the branch of the tree, there was a beehive, and the beehive fell on his head. And the bees are biting him, and it causes him suffering. So he's hanging there on the branch, and tiger is from above, snakes are from the ground, and he's beaten by the bees. And then a sadhu appears from the opposite side of the ditch, and he throws him a rope, and he shouts, "Please, just grab this rope, and you will be saved. I will pull you out." And he replies that, I'm sorry, I cannot, because my hands are broken. I cannot grab the rope. Oh, why not? So then just grab it with your mouth. Just bite it with your teeth and I will pull you out. Oh, I'm sorry, I cannot do it. Why? Because there is a little bit of honey in this beehive. And this honey is leaking on my nose. If I just wait here a little longer, it will dip into my mouth, and then I will be able to enjoy this wonderful honey. So this is the position of persons who are trying to enjoy the material happiness, and peak of material happiness is sex life. So one can just analyze it in the very distressful situation in the material world, and in this way give it up and be a renounced person, or one can purify it. This is the second option, actually, only second option, only alternative. If we engage in a sanctified marriage for the purpose of purifying our sexual attachment, our attachment to this world, and in this way, it is a great what can we say? It is a great mercy of the Lord, because this is the only way. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in Bhakti-aloka, I will quote a fragment. This is the only way that we can have steady intelligence while engaging in seemingly materialistic activities. It is the only way we can actually connect them to Krishna and how they can be purified. Therefore, this whole system of Varnashram Dharma is such a system that is aimed to allow people to, even in this case, engage in their attachments, but in a purified and a sanctified way that is connected to the Lord, that is actually a sacrifice. I will quote a fragment from Bhakti-aloka. The urge of genital is formidable for persons who are averse to the Lord. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.11. In this material world, the conditioned soul is always inclined to sex, meat-eating, and intoxication. Therefore, religious scriptures never actually encourage such activities. End quote. The purport of this statement of the Srimad Bhagavatam is confidential. Those who possess a material body made of flesh and blood are always inclined to associate with women. To minimize this inclination, the marriage ceremony is recommended. Those who wish to get free from the cause of marriage are almost like animals. But those who have crossed beyond the rules of this natural inclination by the association of devotees and the strength of their service, and have thus attained attraction for spiritual subject matters, for them, associating with the opposite sex is very insignificant. Those whose attraction has been purified by the strength of sadhusanga give up the association of women altogether and continue to engage in devotional service. Persons in this group are known as the renounced Vaishnavas. Those whose propensity for associating with women has not been destroyed accept the cause of marriage and remain as householders while engaging in devotional service. Associating with women, as prescribed in the scriptures, means to control the urge of the genitals. Yes, so we know Srila Prabhupada stresses that Lord Chaitanya was very strict in regards to renounced persons about their strictly following the codes of no association with opposite sex. And Lord Chaitanya, we know that he was very merciful, but still we should know that he exemplarily banned Chota Haridas because Chota Haridas are associated with actually it was elderly and very saintly lady. So it was a great example that Lord Chaitanya gave, and it should be like a fearful dream for those who are in the renounced order, that actually we need to get Lord Chaitanya's mercy, and this is how we should act. And if there is some doubt about it, we can refer to this story, and all doubts will be dispersed. Yes. And for those who are purifying it by the codes of proper marriage, the situation itself, they can be actually, the whole mood can be already of a sannyas, that actually we are just trying to serve the Lord, and without personal attachments. Many associates of Lord Chaitanya were grihastas, most of them, of course. So it is not a form that is actually the crucial element, the determining factor whether one can go back to Godhead or cannot, but actually the consciousness. But of course, being conditioned souls, usually we have a problem with attachment to the material world, so therefore the form is there to help us. So living in a grihastha ashrama, it is described in the 11th canto that one can purify his or get rid of his attachment for wife and children by enjoying life with wife and children by proper. There it's this verb enjoying that is mentioned there in the 11th canto is hinting that we should do it properly with the rules of scriptures, and in this way actually we will enjoy, because scriptures are giving us the best possible life, the proper interaction of men and women. Women are protected in the Vedic conception, which is actually the Sanatana Dharma. This is how the world was created. Nowadays women are not protected and they think they are free, but actually they are free to be word missing. Exploited by men, and they have to work because they are free to work, so then they are treated as a manpower, and they cannot fulfill their natural role model that is there within their nature of mothers. And because of this, the children are not protected, and because of this, children are really spoiled and not educated. And nowadays, children don't even have basic moral values, because there is no mother, and the mother is the first guru. So male and female, and the male has to be trained in the brahmachari life, and especially during training, this brahmachari training, one is supposed to get higher taste. This higher taste, this is higher taste from spiritual life. This is the factor that enables one to later retract himself from the family life and then just accept vanaprastha, or put more focus on the spiritual life, because one has the experience, one knows that there is real bliss and real happiness, and this is the purpose of life. So whole system of Varnashrama Dharma is geared to really directing people to this spiritual solution. It is mentioned in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that one should be brahmachari at least for 3 days, at least, so then you will get some. It's also practical, and I think it should be recommended also for grihastas that if they go for some festival, they will just forget sex life and just will float in ecstasy of chanting and dancing, and this experience will lead them on after they will purify their desires, and they will realize that it should be actually meant for fulfillment, that at the end of life we have fulfilled our desires. That I wanted to have a wonderful wife, I wanted to have nice children, and actually I do have, and still I'm not satisfied, and then still something more is missing. And or maybe we can be even satisfied materially, that after fulfilling the desires we have enjoyed this, but still there is something more. This is this spiritual pleasure. Yes. So this whole system is there to help us really to purify our attachments. And this Varnashram, it's Srila Prabhupada once was asked that why there are so many problems in our movement, and his reply was that because brahmacharis and sannyasis are too much associating with women. So it's actually true, because we are not following culture, we are not in our ordinary dealings, in the way how we speak, how we talk, in our mood. The mood is actually very important. So because of lack of understanding proper mood and proper relationships, social relationships, because Varnashrama is not just about, quote, growing carrots and potatoes, end of quote. It's actually a system of social interaction, system of values, system of respect, and system of care. And because we are not following this etiquette, therefore we are almost consciously allowing ourselves to be put into a situation where our material desires will grow. So this is the problem. So, but still, we should try our best to follow it, and of course, we should put more stress on the positive aspect, developing our attachment, developing taste for spiritual life. But we also have to keep an eye on how are we getting free from our attachments, because it is not. We can advance in one area, but we can neglect the other, and in this way we will be forced again to be born in the next life in wonderful family of ISKCON devotees, and we'll have a spontaneous attraction for Harinam and Kirtan from our birth, but we'll also have some small material attachments that have caused us to be born again. Hare Krishna. So let us end our philosophical part here, unless you have some questions and comments, and for 5 minutes, and then later we can, during the last 15 minutes, I will share some experience I got by traveling around Europe recently.
Okay, thanks, Prabhu. I unmuted everybody. Anyone have any questions, comments they would like to ask, or see where Krishna Kirtan has been recently? Anybody? Why don't you share your screen, Prabhu, and
okay.
And then maybe afterwards, others would have some more like that.
Okay. I'm ready. Okay, Hare Krishna. Okay. I had recently traveled around Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. We are developing some international cooperation with the centers there. So I have visited, this is temple in Latvia, wonderful golden deities in Riga. There is the main center there. Very nice visit. And nice decoration on the altar. The temple room is quite small, I don't know, maybe 50 square meters or 60, but very nicely kept and definitely spiritual, inspiring. You can all follow the slideshow.
Yes.
Yeah, looks great.
Yeah. It's really nicely done. One devotee is regularly really spending his hard-earned money in big amounts to make it nice. They have cooking courses 3 times a week. This is the Mataji who is doing it. And they have a very big place, 1,000 square meters in 2 buildings. They have restaurant, big shop in basement. And this is the restaurant. People are eating here, and on the floor upstairs they have some, I don't know, therapists, something like that.
Which temple is this?
So
Where is
this is Riga in Latvia.
Where is that? What country?
Riga in Latvia? Oh, Latvia, it's between Poland and Estonia. Here on the Baltics.
Baltic.
Actually,
Yeah.
between Lithuania and Estonia. You go Poland, then Lithuania, then Latvia, then Estonia, and then Russia. And when you cross the sea, you have Finland.
It looks very
okay, and now
neat and organized. Typically European.
Yeah, it's nicely done. But of course, they are also doing lots of construction, and 1,000 square meters to buildings is really requires lots of energy to maintain everything in a proper shape. This is Estonian temple in Tallinn. They have famous Harinam Mandir. They are doing Harinam every day. I attended their Kirtan Mela festival. 150, 170 people, mostly from Estonia and Latvia, came there to participate in chanting together. They have this nice building. They hope to rent it for free from the government because it's in very bad shape for 50 years, and then they will invest. The temple is small. This is around like, let's see, panoramic view picture. Krsna from US was there. I think you know him. This is during the break because otherwise it was cloudy, and I can show you even. Yeah. So lots of inspiration, really. Wonderful Harinams. I felt that by so many people, 170 people chanting together, we converted the streets of Tallinn into actually place non-different from temple, non-different from Vaikunta. It was absolutely no tinge of material atmosphere. Devotees were just chanting, dancing, and you know, spinning around like in the ecstasy of Kirtan. And they go there on Harinam every day. Sometimes only 1, 2 people, sometimes 100. If they have a crew of around 20 brahmacharis who are traveling around Europe. I can show you some nice also. And they go with Jagannath. They're traveling around with famous Jagannath deities.
All the devotees look rather young in the pictures that I see, in the photos that I see.
Yeah. It's really amazing. This one is also good.
Is this a Rav
nice.
Well,
Yeah,
that's an interesting observation that they're so young, because our movements, I mean, relatively in a big way young in Europe, like in America, exploded, 40, 45 years ago. So here in America, we see a lot of old-timers like us. But in these other countries, I guess it's kind of like a picture looking way back when the Krishna consciousness was so new in America. Everybody were like children.
But not only, like I will show you just later, there are many senior devotees who are giving support and guiding, and they are actually leading so many projects. They have many leaders, and that's exceptional. I will, like in Estonia, they do some yoga is music or Kirtan yoga festivals. Recently, they have done with symphony orchestra. Oh, sorry, it's from YouTube. So I will not bother with this one. But now we go to Lithuania. Like in Lithuania, which is just size of 2.5 million. It's smaller than Warsaw city. But they have 6 temples, 8 restaurants, 3 farm projects, 2 community projects, and much more. This is just one of the restaurants. It's 100 square meters. It's purely organic. This is temple in Kaunas, one of the biggest city in Lithuania. Just 200,000 people, but still. young temple president, but they have a board of 5 senior men who are all at least 20, 30 years in the process, and they are like helping the temple and really supporting. And they have very nice mode. This is small temple hall in Kaunas. 950 cents. Above Srila Prabhupada they have motto, and it really is actually, they are applying it in life. They have very nice atmosphere. Your love to me you will show by how you cooperate with each another. So this motto, they really follow it. They have no like this quarrels, and if there is some quarrel, they are not sending 108 emails and not starting a new conference on fault finding on another devotee. Just they are peacefully dealing it with between themselves, and I could feel it. And this is really important thing that actually how we can get empowered, because it all depends on Krishna's mercy, and we can be empowered if we cooperate nicely. Krishna is especially pleased with this. They have some small. This is photo of a small project they have in downtown, just 100 square meters. They have furnished it with $100 only. You can see it, and they are cooking a regular lunch in the temple, and just one person who is cooking lunch, who is Grihastha, is bringing the lunch here later and sells to students, and he gets his maintenance in this way. Very simple. They have some oh, sorry, some. Do you hear me? Because I cannot hear anything now.
No. We were all
okay.
listening.
Okay. Good. They have started some construction there in Kaunas. One of the restaurants from Maha Samosas, they are famous for it. Very nicely done, really. And imagine that those monstrous samosas they are selling for $1.50 each. I don't know how they are making living, but I think it shows that living there is quite easier than what I know here in Warsaw. This is the project coordinator. He's every day cooking for 400 people for Food for Life himself in this small basement kitchen. This is the restaurant has its own temple and its own brahmachari ashram. 2 brahmacharis and 4 brahmacharinis are living there. It's another temple. And this is just some photos from Kaunas. Yeah, so yeah, so really nice things are happening there, and I was just contemplating how it's so nice that devotees can achieve such a success. It's all by mercy of Krishna, and if we respect each other, don't quarrel with devotees, but respect and cooperate nicely, and remain surrendered to the Lord, just accepting the situation that He is giving us for His service, then we can be empowered. So it's a universal formula.
That was wonderful, Prabhu. Very enlivening to see what's going on.
Some beautiful temples out there. Really beautiful temples.
Yeah, and really just I didn't visit all the temples, and even I have not taken photos of all the places, because especially Lithuania I think is doing very nice. But actually they are also one thing that they are doing nicely, that they are able to facilitate Grihastha devotees their full time engagement in missionary activities by mediums of like working in the restaurants or organizing different preaching programs. Yeah, so it's nice. And I think we need it. We need this like intermediate sector, that there are devotees in the temple who are maintained by the temple and just like full-time temple devotees, and there are the devotees outside who are working and they're living separately. But there should be something in between, that actually devotees can live and work for the missionary activities and live outside and be maintained. I know in London, in Manor, they are doing it because the temple is receiving lots of donations, so they can afford to pay, for example, pujaris some minimal wage. But it's nice to see also more practical ways to do it, like those projects. And
Chris Prabhu put a little chat here about that.
Sorry,
visits there quite a bit in Lithuania, that part of the world. Estonia and Latvia.
Yes.
Have you met him? And do you see the effect of his preaching?
I have met him personally on the summer festivals. Effects of his preaching. I think he is very much supporting all the yatras. They're showing very nice example of how his disciples are obedient to authorities, and it's really nice. The temple president in Kaunas is his disciple, and many more devotees also. Yeah, but I don't know anything specific there. We're trying to develop this cooperation. Actually, it's also nice, founded by European Union with Baltic countries. We'll be working on some preaching projects together, and the project will be funded by European Union. So next week we have outcome of the project revisions. So, if Krishna willing, the projects should pass, and we'll be cooperating more.
Nice, Prabhu. Very nice.
Prabhu, in Europe, are there many splinter Krishna groups, those that have sort of splintered off from ISKCON? And I'm not saying this in any negative way, because I appreciate anyone who's preaching the chanting of the holy name. But, groups like Narayan Maharaj and others of that sort that we see sort of a foothold in America. I was wondering, what do you see in Europe?
Yeah, there are some groups, like we have, I don't know how much in Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia, because I think less. In Poland we have a little bit of it, and surely in western parts of Europe you have it more. There are Narayan Maharaj groups. Actually, they are just his disciples now groups. Like in Poland, we have Sadhu Maharaj coming, I think, once a year or twice a year. And Tripurari Maharaj is also quite influential. They will have some, just end of July, they will have some retreat. But it's there are no conflicts, and they are just doing their own thing, and we are doing our own thing. Siddha Sarpananda is quite influential. They have very nice website, and they are attracting quite many people for chanting Hare Krishna in Poland. I think in little less in Lithuania and Latvia, because those countries, Poland is like more connected to Western Europe, and Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, they're actually more close to Russia. And in Russia, yeah, there is some influence of, I think, some Narayan Maharaj groups, but also there is very prominent influence from many ISKCON projects, especially like this Psychology 3000. They are preaching this knowledge about Vedas in different branches of Vedic literature, not fully connected to person of Krishna, but just as a semi-preaching, and they are attracting many people and inspiring them to read Bhagavad Gita, and some of them are becoming devotees. So it has some big social impact that's there also in those countries and in Russia.
Oh, interesting. Thank you. For whatever it's worth, I've also heard in the past the story told about I think it's an old Puranic story of the man who was running from the lion and fell into that pit, and he was perched on some roots growing through the ground, and below were the poisonous snakes, and above was the hungry growling lion, and he was tasting the honey. The other part of the story is that while he was perched and eating the little bit of honey, there were rats, black and white rats, that were on the root, and they were chewing away at that root that kept him from falling down to the snakes. And they were constantly chewing at that root. And the symbolism of the black and the white rats is that the black rats represented night and the white rats represented day. In other words, so the time factor is there. And no matter how secure he may feel while standing there getting his little bits of honey, the time factor is still acting. And it's just a moment of time until that apparent safety net, that security of being held in the roots of the tree, we're holding him. It's a matter of time until day and night we're chewing at the roots, and sooner or later he would fall. And that's the other part of the story that I'd heard.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. It's also surely very nice, symbolic meanings, but we didn't get into it.
I like telling that story at like Sunday feasts and so on. It's a great one. You told it very nicely. You talked a lot about celibacy and the importance of celibacy, so especially for the newer devotees that are on our Sangha. If celibacy is always observed, then how will our movement or how will society ever grow? What allowances are there that do not, for propagation of children, but do not violate the rules of celibacy?
Yes, so maybe we didn't elaborate on this part, but also, of course, there is this concession for sacred marriage, and within sacred marriage, if one will just execute sex life just for the purpose of procreation of nice Krishna-conscious children, such a person is called also a grihastha brahmachari, or a married celibate. He will have children, he will beget children, but he will just use sex life for begetting children, because this is actually what sex life for. The natural result of eating is that we get nourishment, satisfaction, and freedom from hunger. And the natural result of sex life are children. So we should not try to avoid the natural consequences. I sometimes give this example of noble class in medieval Europe. They used to execute eating for self-pleasure. So they would do the Sunday feast would be brought to them, and they would fill up their stomach with the wonderful Sunday feast dishes, medieval dishes, and then at the end they would be offered a peacock feather. So then they would use the peacock feather, vomit empty out the stomach, and then wash their mouth, and then eat again to have more pleasure. So trying to enjoy sex life and avoiding responsibility of children is something like that. It's very actually unnatural, but we are living in such a distorted society, really, where the roles are completely messed up, and people are suffering so much in the result of this, that people are not, they don't have suffering spiritually, suffering materially. It's very precarious condition. Srila Prabhupada said that our movement will save the world in its darkest hour. So really, socially, it's going worse and worse with each few years. Like even I remember, my grandfather used to sit in his school when he was attending school. Men and women were sitting separately. from the primary school, secondary school, university, and nowadays it's more and more degrading. But if people want to learn anything, they have to observe celibacy. So especially beginning of life should be there at least for some time to train up in spiritual life. As I said, at least few days. And within sacred marriage, one should also relate to each other in a sacred way, as it is enjoined in the scriptures. And in this way, the interaction between male and female will be healthy, satisfying. There will be no divorces, and the result will be very obedient, intelligent, and healthy children.
It seems there may be some connection in, and I don't understand the Catholic faith very well, maybe someone can shed some light on this, but the Pope always seem to stick to their guns about no birth control. And there seems to be some connection in that regard, that sex is for having children. And any form of birth control, not only is it detrimental to one's spiritual life, but also birth control is also a form of violence to the living entity that is stopped from entering into the womb. You know, there's the famous verse, Karmana daivane trena jantor deho papataye striya praveshta utarang pungsareta kanashraya, that the living entity enters into the particle pungsareta, into the male semen, and then striya praveshta utarang, then it enters striya pravishta, enters into the womb of the woman. So any form of birth control is stopping this living entity that has come in the male particle and entering into the woman. And I've always respected that aspect of Catholicism, though I don't really understand an awful lot about it. But that many Catholics are they're thinking it's very old-fashioned, and they don't understand why there can't be birth control. Why don't we stop birth control? Well, I mean, why can't we utilize birth control? But the popes always sort of stick to their guns on that one. And does anyone know do you know the genesis of that, Prabhu?
I think it's that. I think it's because there's the conception that Jesus was celibate. And it was based on that conception. I grew up Roman Catholic in the boarding schools, and there's never any talk in the Catholic tradition anywhere in any Catholic church that Jesus was ever married.
I don't know. Yeah, Poland is that's also one of the big difference. Poland is very Catholic country, and it's actually one of the obstacles we are facing in our preaching, because like in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, people are much more open. They have Protestant church, which is I think they are sharing equals, Protestant church and Catholic church, and they are more also this Russian church. So yeah, they are more liberal in terms of religiosity, but they are quite religious. They are not atheistic country like, for example, Finland is. But Poland is very Catholic, and just now we are organizing on this Saturday, we'll be holding an event on municipality invited us for to present our temple, because we are part of the region, and the city mayor is very favorable and open, but people who are working under him, not necessarily, and it's like unpleasant. They create unpleasant atmosphere. So yeah, it's quite common in Poland that people have some. They need brainwashing, actually. That they think that Hare Krishna is a sect, and they have so many. It's not very popular, but it's still somewhere there. And if even a neutral person meets our movement, he will be just very suspicious and and estranged by what we do.
It started that way in America. When Prabhupada first came, they were really thought of as a cult. A cult in America had a very negative connotation, and there were Moonies and all kinds of different cults, bogus groups at that time, and we really got lumped in with the cults, and people were very suspicious. I don't know if you remember the deprogrammers that were Ted Patrick and others were trying to deprogram young devotees, thinking that they were being subject to mind control. But eventually, and it seems like it's getting it's becoming more accepted on the grander scale, and I'm sure that will happen in time in Poland.
Yeah, sure. It's on the grand scale, and especially new people, youngsters, and even like some open-minded elder people, 40, 50, who are dealing with some more broad-minded topics, esoterics or something like this. They are accepting us very nicely. But those who are putting the ear for the Catholic Church, and they have some really far-out preachers that. Then we have sometimes some problems with them, and sometimes they write some strange articles on the net, but what to do? Majority of people are accepting us quite well. Okay, I'm very sorry I have to end now.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very nice.
Very nice.
Yes, thank you for sure.
Thank you. Happy to share. Thank you for
the PowerPoint presentation was very enlightening. It took us on a tour of Europe. That's wonderful. That was
there's so many nice things happening there.
Guys, thank you, Krishna Kirtan Prabhu. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you.
Jai,
Jai
thank
Srila
you.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Hi, Haribol.
Jai, all glory.
Jai, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Haribol.